Welcome back, everyone. I hope the short break brought you back energized and ready for our session on driving digital transformation with Industry 4.0, or at a minimum, like me, reset the timers in your office so the lights don't go out, like mine did a moment ago. We are very excited to continue our discussion today and transition the focus to short-term as well as long-term digital transformation strategies. To facilitate this panel discussion, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Louis Gallardo, our digital platform and analytics leader, to kick things off and welcome our other panelists. Welcome, Louis. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. And hello, everyone. I'm honored to be the moderator today of a wonderful panel. I feel like it's kind of taking Chad's message and now bringing it to the boardroom, where we got some wonderful panelists. And as Matt mentioned, I lead our digital platform and analytics here at Cherry Bekaert as a principal, which means basically any consulting services from strategy to implementation to optimization around digital platforms and analytical solutions is something my team leads up. So I'm going to jump right in here to the agenda. I know we've got an action-packed agenda and with some wonderful questions and for our panelists, as well as some polls for the audience. So, and again, just to kind of reiterate the Q&A box, feel free to punch in there anytime, but we will have some time at the Q&A at the end. So I'll kick things off, a little introduction and welcome. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves briefly and their roles and a little bit about their company so you get some perspective they're coming from. And then we'll launch into the meat of the discussion today around our panel and poll questions. So, and then, as I mentioned, we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A and some wrap up. I do think that we've got an excellent panelist list today, so I expect to hear some wonderful responses and look to get feedback from the audience as we go through. So, first of all, I want to thank our panelists that come from our client set. First of all, we have Avi Das, who's Chief Executive Officer at CNR, and has joining us Manuel Dietz, Vice President in Corporate IT, Bosch Americas. And we have Svenja Lori, who's the Chief Financial Officer of Hella Automation in Mexico. So in addition to that, as I mentioned, kind of rounding out the boardroom, no boardroom would be complete without a couple consultants. And so I'm delighted to have two esteemed colleagues today, Joe Hayner, who's the Director, Foreign Direct Investment at Cherry Bekaert, and Steve Holliday, who's the Director of Digital Advisory in our advisory business with me. So that kind of rounds it out. And but I do want to give each maybe about 30 seconds to give a little bit of depth on their backgrounds and their companies so that everybody gets a feel of where they're coming from and the discussion today and our dialogue. So maybe we can start with Avi. You want to kick us off?
Sure. Thank you, Louis. Good morning, everyone. My name is Avi Das. I head up a small business precision aerospace manufacturer called CNR. We do precision components for tactical airlift, stealth tactical fighters, and high altitude reconnaissance platforms, primarily support operational readiness for US armed forces and allies all over the world. I'm very happy to be here on this call today. Thank you.
Thank you, Avi. Manuel?
Yeah, thank you, Louis. So my name is Manuel Dietz. I'm the regional CIO for Bosch in the Americas, responsibility across all IT that we do in Latin America and North America. Bosch business here in the Americas, that's a total of around $16 billion US, 1/6. Total global sales around $80 billion. Americas region, 40,000 associates in all our divisions, from automotive being the biggest one to household appliances, power tools, building technologies, thermal technologies, industrial business, and many more that we would cover. I'm based myself out of Chicago. My IT team's mainly in the US, Mexico, Brazil. And from an IT perspective, we cover everything from manufacturing I4.0 topics, what we will discuss today, to the more classical IT infrastructure, ERP systems, anything around customer experience, and also into digital products and services, which obviously is a big influential on production as well. Excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation and looking forward to the discussion. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. And Svenja?
Hello, my name is Svenja Lorry. I'm the CFO of Hella Automotive Mexico. Hella Automotive Mexico is a 100% subsidiary of the Hella Group, which is located in Germany. It's an automotive supplier which focuses heavily on development and manufacturing. That's why we are talking today of automotive parts, especially famous for lighting products, but also electronic components and other systems in your car. So I'm pretty sure all of you have a part of my company in your vehicle, even though you might not know about it. So yeah, we are a tier 1 supplier for all the OEMs. And Hella Group is a family-owned stock-listed company in Germany with roughly 7 billion euro revenue. And Hella Automotive Mexico, with its 6 manufacturing plants and 8 locations, is roughly between 1/6 or 1/7 of the whole group. Yeah, and I'm excited to be here and see where the discussions lead us to.
Well, thank you all. I do appreciate and I look forward to the dialogue today, and hopefully all the audience can appreciate as well the fact that we've got some interesting industries covered here in the manufacturing space. We're going to get a perspective from each of the major components of the C-suite, CEO, CFO, and CIO, and I think it'll be very interesting to bring to life some of the things that Chad discussed today, and really get some tactical, real world discussion on that. But of course, we want to definitely bring in Steve and Joe, and who obviously consult with a variety of different companies and look broad, from a broad swath of clients, and get their perspective. So Steve, you want to kick it off there for us?
Yeah, thanks, Luis. Yeah, Steve Holliday, and I run the CIO advisory practice at Cherry Bekaert. And I've got a little over 20 years of industrial background. On your side of the panel, not the panelists, but the actual working in industry experience, both as operations leader, information technology, and also business process improvement. So I bring all of that perspective, in the work that I do in helping our clients.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. Joe?
Last but hopefully not least, Joe Hainer. Happy to be here. Excited about this panel. It's really an honor to be part of this discussion. I focus my practice on working with industrial manufacturing clients for the firm, basically helping them through their growth journey, being it the national, international, and Industry 4.0, digitalization. Everything around this is a pressing topic, and there's not really an option anymore to basically push this further down the path. It needs to be discussed, and then it's going to be discussed. And excited to be here, see and hear different perspectives on these topics, and yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. So I think from a consulting angle, we got quite a bit of depth covered here as well, with Steve from an IT background, Joe representing supply chain operations, and actually my background gets more on the financial side. 25 years of consulting, and actually a lot of that began in cost accounting, product costing worlds, and controlling days, and now obviously some leadership here at Cherry Bekaert with respect to our advisory business. So I'm not a professional moderator, and so don't send any feedback relative to that today. But hopefully I round out the discussion and look forward to lead that today. So jumping right in, I wanted to first kind of start off making a connection from Chad's discussion and from an economist view, and bring that down now to a company and role level perspective. So the first question I wanted to get into is just how do you see the Industry 4.0 helping to overcome some of the challenges we heard about in the global manufacturing outlook for 2022? In particular, we heard about raw material costs challenges. I think that was number one in their polling question response there. But Chad also mentioned talent, quite a bit, as well as even supply chain disruptions, which we've all heard about. But Svenja, why don't I start with you? Maybe give your perspective on how you see Industry 4.0 overcoming some of those challenges.
I was thinking a lot about this question, and I don't see it yet for 2022. I see it rather like an accelerator, because we are facing so many challenges, and we have seen last year in 2020 that our supply chain, we are global. Globalization is not something we can talk about. It's happening. And we saw that it's so complex that any small disruption immediately ripples through the whole industry, no matter which industry you are in. So I do believe that it will accelerate exactly the outlook, that it's really challenging what is coming also in 2022, that we have to focus in Industry 4.0 and see if with data and with more connections with better supply chain in a digital world, we might be able then to overcome the challenges in the future. So that's what I see in this respect.
Yeah, that's great. That's great perspective, and definitely agree. And obviously, from where you sit in Mexico relative to that whole supply chain, I'm sure you see it firsthand every day. So that's great. Manuel, what about from your standpoint?
I would fully agree with what Svenja said. There's no easy fix to the supply chain issues we're seeing, and I4.0 certainly can't fix issues that are spanning much wider than just looking at the production itself. What I do see is that it's accelerating, and I think again that's similar to what Svenja said. It's accelerating many of our I4.0 activities. It is definitely triggering new conversations about production locations. Like if I look at the production in North America and then chip shortages, it obviously triggers questions of what can we do to improve our supply chains in that regard. But again, there's no easy fix with I4.0. We're dependent on our suppliers, and I know that there is conversations going on. If I'm not wrong, I think Samsung is thinking about bringing a microchip production to North America itself, but that's more like a multi-year project that then affects the supply chain. If I look at I4.0 itself, I think it will accelerate through what we're seeing right now, and I think it will accelerate some of the discussions about, and it's more like labor market related. What can we further automate? How can we increase efficiencies in our production to get a little less dependent on labor market fluctuations? And then the last piece certainly is better management, more efficiencies in our supply chains themselves. Kind of looking into our system landscapes, and that's broader than just the pure I4.0. It's like the full connection of your ERP systems, logistics, warehouse systems, and then get more efficiencies into those parts to compensate at least some of the shortcomings in the supply chain.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think from a consulting view, both of you hit kind of all angles of kind of processes, technology, and people components to it as well, just in kind of how you're organizing, and the greatest Samsung example. And maybe Joe, kind of bringing a consulting view to it, how are you consulting your companies, or what are you seeing relative to your clients in this regard?
Yeah, thanks. So can also echo what Manuel and Svenja was saying. So there's a lot of thinking around what can be done with the supply chain. Nearshoring comes to mind, kind of moving production capacities closer to actually where the markets are being served, where the customers are. And the challenge is that there is really no quick fix for global supply chain change. It's a strategic discussion, strategic decision, which also drives a lot of investment needs, and certainly conversations which need to be done in the boardroom. And so our clients, my clients, they are really asking us to support with scenario analysis, with running different cases or running opportunities for them to see what can be modeled for the supply chain, and having the conversation. Okay, where do you want to be? Not next year. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And then basically working back from that strategic plan to come up with the best solution in that time frame.
Great. No, that makes a ton of sense, and I think we wanted to get to our first poll. So Matt, if you want to bring that up, and maybe we can quickly poll the audience to give them a feel on this one. Basically the question is, what Industry 4.0 technological advancements is your business looking to make as a top investment in the next 12 months? IoT, data analytics, automation, AI, other. So it'd be great to get a quick data point from the audience here. And we'll give about 60 seconds here, and then Avi and Steve, I'll start with you on the next panel question once we come back from this and see what our responses look like. Okay. There you go. Very interesting. Looks like a heavy bit of data analytics and automation. I think the automation, it looks like it edges out everything, which may be a little bit of a catch-all term. We kind of didn't want to list every single thing about robotics or even RPA, robotic process automation, or it could be just simple as some workflow or ways to automate some processes. But clearly that seems to be top of mind, and as well as just data, which we haven't hit a lot upon yet. I think Svenja mentioned it as kind of a key component, but we'll dive a little bit more into that one as we move along. So, but I guess maybe Avi, coming back to you as a starting point. Our next question really looks at how do you see the investments you're making in technology related to Industry 4.0 helping you solve your most pressing business opportunities, and what connection do you see these with investments and potential growth as you move forward?
That's a great question, Louis. I think the way I think about those type of investments is from two lenses. One that allows us a seat at the table to play with the big boys in the defense arena. So it's mostly to do with capability that allows us to sort of work in areas that we may not be working in right now. So it's making us future ready. The other lens is mostly in terms of becoming more streamlined, being able to sort of trap leakages in our overall process value chain, and then being able to convert that into dollars. So from that perspective, we are in the middle of upgrading ERP systems, doing operational excellence at CNR. And a lot of that sort of helps us to look at the next 5 to 7 years as expanding not just the proverbial portfolio of products that we deal with, but also sort of bringing in a step function in our ability to compete in complex manufacturing, and therefore the opportunities that come as a result of those capabilities. So I sort of look at that as something which you can't avoid. In fact, it should be driving strategy from the beginning. That's basically the way that you should look at hiring practices. You should look at overall enterprise process maps and flows, so that you have the right people and the right infrastructure to tap into these investments and make the most of them.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to say that, and Steve, I want to get your perspective, but I think for sure I've noticed quite a tremendous during the pandemic, this shift back to the foundational type technologies as well to kind of really bolster that and then get it positioned to be able to aggressively take advantage of newer technologies kind of coming out of that. So there definitely seems to be almost this back to infrastructure, back to kind of basic components like ERP. Which frankly had been kind of on the back burner for pre-pandemic. But Steve, what are you seeing in that regard, and what's your perspective on it?
Absolutely. Well, I think, as you think about the investments in digital, you're really investing in the future platform for your business. And when I was in industry and making cases for these types of investments, I would talk about the consequence of not making the investments and our ability to compete in a global market if we're not making these kinds of investments that help us get faster, faster product development, faster manufacturing cycles, deliveries, and repeatability of those processes. And so, when you look at the core of manufacturing and the supply chain, the delivery into the supply chain, it's having a model that is responsive, but also you're making investments in your growth, that you've got some kind of platform that you're able to scale efficiently. A lot of organizations that I work with, many times they've grown up in silos or they've grown through acquisition, and they've got independent systems, and their technology spend is oftentimes spread across those different systems. And when times are tight and you're trying to squeeze the impact of your budget, being able to make investments on a single platform that powers your entire business, those are good things. And so as we look at the case for investment in technology, it's all of those things that Chad was talking about in his presentation, the labor shortages, hard to find good folks, and the wages, and the instability in supply chains. And so these kinds of investments can help you reduce those current risks to your business. Now, granted, these are longer term investments, so it's going to help you probably in the next type of cycle that you encounter. But companies make these kinds of investments in hard times, and when things turn up, it really gives them a great platform for improving business performance. The other thing is it improves jobs. At the end of the day, there is a lot of work out there that's, I don't take this the wrong way, but it's bad work. There are things that aren't necessarily the most productive things for people to be doing. And so investment in technology, how can we use technology to improve jobs for people, improve their ability to do higher level things, and that really make a difference to your customers.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you ended on there, because I think talent is such a one of the biggest challenges that we obviously talked about quite a bit. And then when you look at the technological investments that you make, I think employees are gravitating where their job can be easier and they can take advantage of newer technologies, or just going back to Avi's point, having the foundational pieces in place. They don't want to be frustrated. They don't want to be inefficient. They don't want all those things. So definitely, I think that's a key point that you bring there. Svenja, I think from your standpoint, it'd be interesting to hear, from a financial perspective, where are you seeing kind of obviously, directing traffic relative to financial investments, but from a technological standpoint, where are you seeing that go?
Yeah. Well, as a CFO, of course, I always try to see what is the return of investment. And for everything in Industry 4.0, it is very hard to estimate. I'm a big fan of it, so I support it. But to make a case out of it, it's very hard because you have to invest a lot. You also don't know what will come next, because we only see right now what is coming. If you had asked us, I don't know, now 2 years ago, that we will have this webinar, for instance, everybody would have said, are you crazy? Because we didn't expect that there will be so much change in overall. So it's very hard to, from the financial point of view, to make a case for investment. If you need external financing, to get financing for it, because it's hard to grasp. So it's a really tricky act to make a business case and then move forward. And if I might I'd like to add to one of the comments from Steve, because I have a lot of discussions with our workforce here about digitalization, about efficiency improvements and so on. And it varies a lot. I mean, Mexico is a low-cost country. So the country depends on that it's a low-cost country and that you need labor. And if you move to the digital world, you need suddenly a complete different skill set. You need highly qualified people. You also need, even if you have highly qualified people right now, and I mean in finance, for instance, accountant, to have a digital mindset is very different from being just of being an accountant. So you have completely different mindsets that you have to figure out and see that the people also are willing to support it. Because sometimes what we see as in the C-suite, we say, well, it's, you want to do value added work, but sometimes people want to have busy work and they want to have a repetitive job because that's what they feel comfortable with. So you have as a company have to do true change management to make it happen. So there are a lot of different aspects that have to be seen. It's not as easy as one would hope.
Yeah, no, two very key points I think you made there. First on the ROI, I Avi hit it, and I think said it well, that some of the things are just a cost of doing business, and you have to kind of put it in place. And I think the one you alluded to a little bit is the risk mitigation, both are which are very difficult to quantify. But clearly, when you look at the supply chain, hindsight's 2020 here. But had we done a lot of risk mitigation in the supply chain area and thought through resiliency and contingency and how do you redirect supply chains in a short time frame? How do you put a business case around that when you can't foresee the future? So very good points. And then bringing it down to the workforce piece, and I think there's a question out there as well that we can hit upon a bit relative to the workforce and the change management aspects that you brought up. Obviously, training is a big piece of that, and looks like Mike out there asked a question relative to the challenges in the current workforce skill sets and or the need for education to prepare for Industry 4.0. And I think maybe Svenja, just a follow-up question to the point you made, which may address this. What are some of those things you're doing, to address the changing technical skills from an education change management? Maybe you can elaborate a bit on maybe some things you've done in that regard.
Yes, so we do a lot of teachings via e-learning, but also in person, where we try to explain to the workforce what are the benefits of becoming more digital, to make a change in, of course, in administration where I work, but also in manufacturing. So we do a lot of campaigns. We are trying to make it very attractive for the people with use cases, why they then don't have to do data entry, for instance, that they don't have to type everything, that they don't have to do certain things in the production area, that they have time for more. So we do a lot of training and campaigns, and a lot of, more than anything, it's communication. And we cannot guarantee jobs, that's a fact, but opening opportunities for the employees so that they see, hey, you won't do this anymore. but look what you could do with your free time to spike their interest, and this way getting them on board. So that's what we are trying to do.
Yeah, no, I like that, and I think that makes a ton of sense. Finding the benefits at an individual or a role, or even a kind of a persona, if you will, to put it in some consulting speak, is key to designing a solution, as well as how to implement it and train them and go about the change management. So I think those are good points, and so I guess with that, let me quickly pivot to the second poll. Let me go ahead and put that out there. And I think this one, to really get a sense of the audience on where is digitalization in their priorities. And the question is the continued digitalization of business, such as Industry 4.0, an important part of your growth strategy? Is it in the top quartile of your priorities? Is it in the upper half? Is it in the lower half, or not among your business priorities? So maybe we can give about 60 seconds there to answer that one, and then continue on here. And Manuel, we'll start with you on the next question, and look forward to getting a little bit more Joe and Avi as well.
Sounds good. And I'm kind of disappointed that I can't vote.
Yeah.
You can tell us.
Yeah. There you go. Well, so look at 60%, if you will, have it in the upper half or top quartile of their priorities. 30% have it in the lower half, or I'm sorry, 40% have it in the lower half, or not at all. So clearly, the digitalization is a key effort from, and obviously looking at all aspects of processes and we talked about automation earlier. I imagine all that gets kind of mixed in. So interesting feedback on that one. So I guess, Manuel, the next question we had was really, what initiatives do you see as most important to improve performance, leveraging Industry 4.0 and key trends of edge connectivity, data exposure, insights, and automated actions? So in other words, if you look at Industry 4.0, what and the major tenets of it, what do you think is really going to boost the most from a performance standpoint from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The situation is that there won't be that one thing you can do. I think the easy one things you could do, that's all the stuff you did like 20 years ago. So we're now in a much more complex world, where it is making sure we understand the dependencies, and that we bring things in place that actually also play all the different perspectives that we gotta play with. To give you a couple of examples, one large activity we run at Bosch globally is an overall very integrated manufacturing and logistics platform that will include our move from the SAP R3 world into the S4 world. And I don't want to go into the details there, because that's kind of an own panel discussion in itself. But that's a multi-year, pretty large activity for Bosch overall, and anyone else who's running SAP systems will know what I'm talking about. And that will have clear effects on efficiencies in production, in logistics, but only kind of a couple of years down the line, because we have to address all of our production locations globally. Alone in the US, we've got close to 20. In Mexico, it's around 10, a couple down in Brazil, and then there's more in Germany, parts of Europe, China. So massive undertaking to make that happen. But then even to make that happen, we need to invest into sometimes hardware, simple things like switches, kind of the things that connect your internal LAN to the global networks, because they are not meant to do the kind of traffic we will see in the future. And I just had the question last week from our plant down in Brazil. They need to invest into some hardware upgrades anyway, because certain things are at the end of the life cycles. And they now want to make sure that whatever they purchase now also holds the next, and that's the big question, X years. Is that 5 years, 10 years? To be ready for the big shift in the production, manufacturing, logistics platform. And that's a very tricky question to answer because it's a kind of too big investment right now because it's not needed now, not next year, not even in 2 years. But if you don't have it now, then you need to repurchase in a couple of years down the path. So that's the kind of questions that we're facing. And kind of back to Svenja's point about the ROI, it's not there for the next 1 or 2 years, but it still might be the right choice to invest now to then not have invest again. And then outside of that, kind of manufacturing systems, and we can go down if there's an interest in the Q&A maybe later. Now, there's obviously work we do when we look into robotics, and it's not the classical kind of production line automation. It's more the mobile robots in manufacturing. And then again, it's a link back to what Svenja said. It doesn't make sense in all of our production locations. So Mexico is different to what we see in the US. Sometimes in the US, something is a very clear investment case, whereas in Mexico, it isn't. In Mexico, sometimes it might be an investment case to de-automate something because that's cheaper for what we're trying to achieve. So it's a much more complex thing than you could just kind of go for it and say, that's the one thing we do globally and that's going to work. There's a multitude of things happening. And then maybe a last one, because it's always kind of an interesting topic. I'm getting these questions a lot. It's around 5G. Do you, Bosch, invest into 5G? And unfortunately, it's the same, not so black and white and very gray kind of answer. Yes, we do a lot of work trying to understand where it would help. And just from a recent conversation with our folks in Mexico, we see some kind of out of the direct indoors environments use cases where we need the connectivity and only 5G will be able to provide that. But it's very specific use cases where we can already understand what it means and how it needs to be done. And now it's going to start to find the right partners to actually set it up. It's smaller than what we expected a couple of years in the past, where we all, I think, felt like 5G will come like in a big swing and then it's there everywhere. It's much more complex than that. So unfortunately, no black and white easy answer to the question, but a lot of kind of detailed work that's needed and great conversation points, definitely.
Yeah, no, some great points in there, and I definitely agree. Industry 4.0 is pervasive technologically. So to say you're going to do only one thing is maybe you're kind of focusing there, but it's going to have impacts to all the other areas. And I think that some of the points you made there, I'm sure resonates with the audience quite a bit. Maybe Joe, you can expand on kind of what you're seeing more broadly from a variety of different clients in that regard on this one.
Sure. So from our perspective, just stepping back a little bit, it's for organizations who haven't dealt with Industry 4.0 for many years, who are in the beginning. It's more of stepping back and identifying where am I in that journey. So we did a recent survey with a couple of our clients, just asking them to answer some questions and providing them an easy assessment to say, okay, where am I in that journey? So to find out what is the starting point actually for that conversation. And then secondly, really kind of like Manuel and Svenja said, it's a complex topic, really helping our clients to break it down into more manageable pieces, and also priority. What can you actually achieve? Coming to Svenja's point, to make a case so that someone you get it financed, or you find the build it into your cash flow that you can make these investments, being it from your own operations, or get additional financing for it. So it's really almost industry agnostic, that type of conversation. And then Bosch, Hella, very sophisticated organizations, kind of with a lot of resources. A lot of the clients we work with in the middle market space, they have to really build a case and manage that these limited capex capabilities they have, and that's where we can certainly support and provide some value, just to think through these option strategies, and also share with what other players in their specific industry are doing.
Yeah, That makes some sense. And I think what I'm hearing is molding of, short term as well as a long term view, but doing it in an agile fashion such that you're trying to get results that are quicker, but still broaden it out to look more strategically on where you're going and how does that all fit together, and yet hit the different pieces. So, be it 5G, be it IoT, be it, advanced data analytics, trying to bring some of those pieces together and trying to drive towards getting that performance improvement. Steve, maybe from your standpoint, I guess, looking at CIO advisory services, of those areas, are you seeing any particular pockets that are maybe hotter than others in terms of where people are focusing and driving to get some performance improvements?
Yeah, I want to go back and then we'll come back to your question here, but to go back to some comments Manuel had made, and that was kind of to reinforce the point he made around investment in infrastructure. Number one, digitalization, all of this new technology needs a solid backbone, a data backbone. And so that's oftentimes a place we need to start. And we look at other technologies that are in the base in businesses that are the foundation, right? And are they the right platforms to be putting more investment on top of? And so those are very important thoughts. And I also heard him say that we don't want to come back in a few years and have to make a reinvestment. And that is a statement I translate to that's a strong cloud endorsement. You're moving your assets into a cloud environment, and you're paying operating expense, and you're not having to continue to plow reinvestment into those assets. And so I just wanted to make those reinforcements, and I also want to go back to something that Svenja was talking about, and that was the difficulty of the ROI. And in my experience, there's different ways that companies go about transformation. One is there's something strategic that's driving them, and they jump all in, and they're confident this is the right path, and they're less concerned about the ROI. But that's not the reality for a lot of businesses, most businesses probably. And I've had experience in tough, low margin businesses where you really needed to demonstrate the return. And we'd come back and we'd validate after we implemented projects. We'd validate, did we achieve that? And so that approach, we've got to find something that kind of allows for the incremental. And so what I would recommend to people, you want to have a full view, as full as possible, to say, in a perfect world, these are the things that I would like to be doing, and have a vision and I'll say a bit of a roadmap, even though that roadmap may change as you are in your journey. You're always focused on the next highest value delivery to your organization, sort of an agile approach to the management of this project portfolio. And so I would also just kind of emphasize that, and that you make the case at the time for that next project, that next digitalization. And the last thing I like to talk about with clients is the digital thread, and how the digital thread weaves through my organization. And what we mean by that is there a point where the process goes onto paper, or it comes offline and needs some type of manual interaction? Those are oftentimes places where there's a lot of inefficiencies, and being able to pull that digital thread through your business. Now, not all of those investments may make sense, but if you could imagine that digital thread that's pulled through your business and getting all of the work processes online and integrated, that's nirvana. That's the state that you're trying to get to, but obviously it's got to pass investment criteria. In terms of what we're seeing, it's different for different businesses. There are organizations that are very interested in driving visibility on the shop floor, and better productivity, and have machines that need connection to be able to monitor machine activity, and to bring that information together in a continuous improvement view. So essentially, a key metric like overall equipment effectiveness, OEE, being able to drive a metric like that and have the data available for that. It really engages your factory floor in improvement. So we're seeing investments like that. We're also seeing investments in planning. Companies want to become more efficient and better at seeing the future within their sales and because your inputs coming through sales and supply chain are critical. They're the driver to your financials. And having stability in those processes as much as possible and improvements in looking out and running scenarios. We're seeing those kinds of investments. And then again, just there's a myriad of different cases based on the needs of each business. But I've just listed a couple of some of the things that we're seeing.
That's great. No, you summarized it very well, and so I'll leave it at that. So why don't we jump to the next polling question? And I want to make sure we get 3 in here. I know we're having good dialogue. So the next one is, in what area is your top priority for digitalization to improve your business? Is it customer service, order management? Is it planning and scheduling? Procurement, logistics, manufacturing operations, receivables, payables, administrative? So we kind of took a view so far around, kind of the technology view and maybe a perspective from the different panelists and their roles. This is kind of more of a functional view and where is some of that taking place. So I'll get that viewpoint from the audience here.
And maybe a
And
little
then-
bit as a gap filler, picking up on what Steve said earlier on the cloud topic. I think that's an excellent point. Not everything obviously can be brought to the cloud. That's what we start to discuss, like edge cases, as we call that. Like I mentioned, switches, that is simply hardware that is needed on site, no discussion. But there is clearly a move towards bringing things into the cloud that can be brought into the cloud. And then there's a new kind of challenge in bringing cloud and local infrastructure together. So it's a great session in itself. Again, just having an hour on, what's the direction we're taking there.
That's a good add. I thought you might be going down the path of whether you're going to put SAP in the cloud or not, but I won't go there.
That's part of the discussion.
Exactly. So it looks like interesting results. A little bit spread, but there is one outlier in the planning and scheduling area. So I presume that's obviously as a result of a lot of the supply chain pieces and trying to navigate that. So digitalizing that area seems like it's a key piece. So really quickly pivoting, I want to get a little political here. I won't get too crazy on this one, but maybe Avi, for you to start off to get your perspective. Obviously, there was just a large bipartisan infrastructure bill that was just passed, and that's going to have sweeping investments, obviously big numbers that's going to drive investment into infrastructure. I think you mentioned infrastructure. I know in a little bit different context, but now looking at this bill, I guess, do you see any synergies related to this act and Industry 4.0 and or priorities or opportunities for your organization?
Well, the simple answer is yes and no. Any investments in infrastructure typically has multiplier effects in terms of the larger vendor ecosystem that we tap into. So to that effect, it has a positive impact on some driving the kinks out of the system that we have to face with right now. As a defense manufacturer, I'm somewhat insulated from the ambit of this bill. But given the fact that my overall goal is to support operational readiness, a lot of the assets that I deal with in terms of government, military assets that I support, they benefit by having a larger sort of stable in manufacturing and infrastructure environment. So to that extent, I see the next 3 to 5 years being net positive for me as a small business player in this space.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And Svenja, I'd be kind of curious. I know obviously being in Mexico is maybe a little bit removed from the this infrastructure bill, but obviously having properly working roads and bridges here in the United States does impact the automotive industry. But I'd be curious your perspective, kind of looking from a different country view as well as for your industry.
I do believe it will have a positive impact just because you do need external factors to be right. So by setting with this bill, of course, it is a clear statement that this is important and that there is a framework for digitalization. So the part of the internet that everybody should have access, the bridges and so on, it's just a clear statement from the government. And since Mexico is always looking up to the US, of course, it will also trickle down to Mexico overall, because our main customers are in the US. If we can communicate better, if also remote locations, everything is more connected, of course, then it will have also an impact on us, rather indirect, but it will have an impact.
Great. Joe, I'll give you the kind of the last word here before we get to the final poll. Go ahead on this one.
Thank you. I would echo what Svenja is saying and Avi in regards to the bill. It's a more of a long-term investment, so that we will not see necessarily any quick wins here. But I'm excited about it. I'm excited about especially the investments around the EV infrastructure, talking about automotive, and everybody who's wants to hear a little bit more about that. We have a panel coming up next Tuesday where we have automotive tier one supplier attending, myself and a logistic expert, where we kind of talk a little bit deeper about supply chain and specifically automotive industry and the change in the automotive industry pushing into EV. So and to Avi's point, couldn't agree more, kind of that ripple effect you have going through different industry segments just from improving infrastructure. And clearly there were some there are some critical needs. And finally, strategic change from a supply chain perspective to going into a nearshoring solution can only work if you have the respective infrastructure to serve your customers. If you move back to the US or to Mexico to serve the US market, you basically need that infrastructure to do this efficiently. And that's certainly something of value. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And, I want to squeeze in the last polling question, just in case anybody missed one of the others and they get their 3 polling questions for their CPE credit. So the last one is, how would you rate your maturity of your digitalization industry 4.0 efforts? Level 1, no little coordinated activity. Level 2, initial coordination and planning. Level 3, defined early stages of execution. Level 4, managed executing on the agenda and seeing the results of the investments. Or level 5, continuously improving mature process, selection, execution, and delivering value. I think it'll be interesting to see, kind of where people self-assess and their maturity in this regard. I definitely will give a little broader perspective in the manufacturing space, given our audience is largely there. So I think that it is something that if I can shamelessly plug for a minute from a Cherry Bekaert standpoint, we do come in and provide assessments that are very rapid to determine where people are maturity wise and to help them through some of the things that we talked about today, challenges relative to ROI. How do you prioritize? What are the different areas? What are the newer technologies to take advantage of? All good stuff there. So the results of the final one looks like largely a couple areas, level 2 and level 3. Not a lot wanted to say no to little, and very said they were very mature. So kind of it sounds like from a journey standpoint, everybody's getting, or most are getting past that first level, starting to emerge a bit, but clearly to get to the optimization as well as then best in class further on is kind of key. So with that, I want to go ahead and wrap, you know, a few things. First of all, thank you to the panelists, especially Avi, Manuel, and Svenja. Your insights and perspectives was outstanding, and I hope the audience found some interest and some value in your comments. I definitely did, and know I'll speak on the behalf of Joe and Steve. We really appreciate you spending the time with us today, and Joe and Steve, thank you also. Don't want to overlook you, and to the audience, really thank you for taking the time today and participating in this one. Hopefully you found it engaging and enlightening, and look forward to receiving some feedback via the survey and any improvements we can do on a go-forward basis. So once again, thank you very much. And Matt, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. I can certainly believe that I speak for the audience when I thank all of you for that input, the candid discussion, just extremely valuable insights. Safe to say digital investment is going to remain a key initiative within the industry, improve efficiency, accelerate product development, and really just improve both current and future profitability through analytics. So I certainly can say I learned a lot. So appreciate all of you participating. That does conclude our second session this morning. We thank all of you for joining us. Certainly, if you have any additional questions regarding today's topics, or certainly questions particularly for any of the panelists, please, we invite you to reach out and get your questions answered. We know we covered quite a bit. So I'd also like to remind everyone that the recordings from this morning's conference will be uploaded to our website after the conclusion of this event. And we'll also send a link out to all attendees with links to those recordings. And then lastly, and Louis just hit on it as well, we really appreciate any feedback. So those that can participate in the short survey after this, that will open once you leave this session. So we appreciate the feedback. Thank you again for the time. We really hope to hear from you and to see you again next week, where we'll take some of the concepts we talked today and really put a pivot to tax on that, both from a legislative update front, as well as speaking to some of the discussion we just had around supply chain, is how to plan for the most tax efficient supply chain that you can. So thank you all. We hope you have a great rest of your day and look forward to seeing you next week.